collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
This week, as the Commonwealth Short Story competition rolls into town, we talk about literature. We'll hear from the programme manager of the competition.
And the languages that we currently accept is Kiswahili, Tamil, Malay, Chinese, Portuguese, Bengali, Samoan. And this week we're going to make the announcement that from this year onwards we're going to also be accepting stories in Greek.
Talk to this year's winner.
I try to explore the psychology of the situations. I try to make sense of it, and a lot of my writing deals with pulling these strange stories out that people see as madness and trying to get a little deeper into it. Why? What really happened? Like, why did this happen? What were they thinking at the time?
And find out from the chair of the judging panel what aspiring writers should try to do.
You know, just getting it down on the page in the first instance is everything for all kinds of writing. And the editing is where something will be turned more perfectly or towards perfection, which is what you're aiming for.
We'll also hear about Cypriot racing driver Tio Ellinas' hopes for the next round of the Porsche Carrera Cup.
If we can win the race, then that will be the best plan possible. From our position, from where we are now, I think it's very doable to win it.
The Commonwealth Short Story Prize was awarded in Nicosia earlier this week, and I've met up with the programme manager for the Commonwealth Writers, Janet Steele, and Vijay Krishnarayan, who is the Director General of the Commonwealth Foundation. Janet, if we start with you, how has the Commonwealth Short Story Prize evolved? Because you used to do novels as well, I think, and it's a way of encouraging people across the Commonwealth to get creative.
Yeah, well, the Short Story Prize started in 2012, and you're right there. It was started to be, the Short Story Prize came in so that it could be more inclusive. Because to write a short story, maybe, not saying it is, but it could be easier than writing a novel. So that's spread out across the whole Commonwealth, but also we accept stories in other languages as well to make it even more inclusive. And the languages that we currently accept is Kiswahili, Tamil, Malay, Chinese, Portuguese, Bengali, Samoan. And this week we're going to make the announcement that from this year onwards we're going to also be accepting stories in Greek.
Which will be great news for Cypriot writers. Have you had any entries from Cyprus?
Yes, well this year we had 5. So we're really hoping that next year we'll have a lot more.
So this is something now that's evolved. You get how many entries from how many countries?
Yeah, well, that's what's so fantastic. The numbers have really increased over the years. So last year it was touching 6,000. This year we had a few less, but we had it from more countries. So 48 of the 53 Commonwealth countries submitted stories. So that is absolutely amazing. So we have judges all over the Commonwealth to make it fair. All of the stories are read completely blind, so nobody knows who's written them. Once we get the stories down to 200, they then go to the judges, who again read them completely blind, and the judges come from the 5 continents: Asia, Africa, Canada and Europe, the Pacific and the Caribbean. So they read them, and then they get that down to a short list of between 20 to 24 stories, writers. And all that has to be done over Skype because people are literally all over the Commonwealth.
So the first judges who read the stories, presumably for their region, or do they read all of them? I'm interested to know how the sort of logistics works out, because you can't read 6,000 stories, surely.
No, you can't read 6,000 stories. So those judges, they're not. We call them readers rather than judges. So you don't read only from your region, but we have a good mix, so that if there is a cultural context, then people from that region will understand that cultural context. But it's not regional specific. And in fact, even though the judges, the final 5 judges and the chair do come from the 5 regions, again, they read all of the stories. But when it comes to discussing them, again, over Skype, having a local knowledge is really, really important to put things in context. And also, you know, on what other end of the scale is the fact that they may have read that story before, you know, in that cultural context, or it might be very similar to something, you know. So I'm not saying people copy other people's stories, but stories get repeated. There are only so many stories. That's what they say, don't they?
And particularly within certain cultures, I
Exactly.
suppose certain things are important. Vijay, if we can come to you, can you just fill us in a little bit about the work of the Commonwealth Foundation and indeed how this Commonwealth Writers' Short Story competition fits into the overall picture?
The Commonwealth Foundation is the Commonwealth's agency for civil society. We've been given the responsibility by Commonwealth heads of government to support and encourage people's participation in all aspects of public life. We're encouraging people to get involved in policy processes. We're getting people involved in calling their institutions to account, but we also want to provide platforms for people to express themselves, to shape public debate. And you can see that Commonwealth Writers, Janet's work, and the Commonwealth Short Story Prize in particular, is really important in providing those spaces where anyone can put pen to paper, come up with 5,000 words, and share their own personal experiences, and in doing so, open a window on their lives and their experiences and share those with the over a billion citizens that there are of the Commonwealth. I think the great thing about the prize is not only do we speak to and involve and include through the prize Commonwealth citizens, but it's a global programme. I think we talk about the Short Story Prize as the world's most global literary prize. I think Janet's really set out the way in which we've democratised our work by making it accessible and open to anyone in so many languages, not just English. We're not about, you know, promoting English as the only language of the Commonwealth. We acknowledge the diversity of the Commonwealth, and we encourage that, and through the prize try and enable people from all walks of life to participate in the work of the Commonwealth.
And when you talk to people from the Commonwealth, ordinary Commonwealth citizens, I mean, what sort of things do they tell you about this programme and the other things that you do for civil society?
I think it's hard to generalise because of the diversity of the Commonwealth. If you asked 1.3 billion people what they thought of the Commonwealth, you get 1.3 billion different answers. But I think one of the great things that we can say about the prize in particular is that it is, in a sense, it's the Commonwealth at its best. It's inclusive, so it makes space for everyone and everyone's experience and story, but it's also expressive, so it values those stories and it sees worth in providing the space and the resources and the support and the airtime, if you will, for people to tell stories that you don't often hear about. I think that's one of the great things about the Commonwealth, is it provides us with an opportunity to listen to each other. You know, sometimes people dismiss the Commonwealth as a talking shop, and talking shops are always, when you use that phrase, it's always in a pejorative sense. But I think one of the things that we realise at the Foundation is that, you know, we need more talk. We need more fellowship. We need more spaces where people can exchange and actually put themselves in another person's shoes. And the Short Story Prize is a great way of enabling us to do that.
I have to ask you, about to get a new head of the Commonwealth, I think, at the recent meetings that were held in London. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, it was very encouraging for all of us to hear from Her Majesty on how she sees the future of the institution. We all pay tribute to her tremendous sense of duty and dedication to the institution. But it's also encouraging that there's a vision that heads of government themselves will have discussed. I think the important thing to say about Her Majesty's role in the Commonwealth is that it is, to a ceremonial role. It's agreed by heads of government, but it understands that the Commonwealth is at its heart an association of member states, of the 53 member states. It's those governments, those people that make the decisions about who should lead and who should not lead. And it was great to see both that desire to maintain a tradition of leadership, but at the same time understand that the ultimate decision-making rests with heads of government and the constituent member states of the Commonwealth.
Janet, if we come back to you, Vijay mentioned 5,000 words. To people who don't write, they have no idea what that is. Can you just sort of encapsulate and why you decided on 5,000 words? I presume some are slightly shorter,
Yeah.
but I assume you don't accept any that are very much longer.
No, we don't accept any that are longer, but we do accept stories between 2,000 to 5,000, so that is a very big gap there. I think 5,000 was selected because that is a good length for a short story. You know, that is acknowledged that that is the length. And, yeah, I think what we do at the Commonwealth Writers to get people to understand what that means to write a short story is we work on very many different levels. So we also include craft development as a part of the Short Story Prize. So this year we've started a programme for those writers who maybe didn't make the shortlist but came really close to making the shortlist because they really have something to say, they have a clear voice, they know how to say it, but they might not yet have developed the craft sufficiently to get them through to the shortlist or to the, you know, the ultimate final 5. So we're creaming those groups off regionally and we're setting up craft development workshops. So we've already done one in the Caribbean for 20 writers and we're about to do one in Africa, most probably Zambia, in a couple of months' time.
So the people who've done those courses may well put in something next year, but I presume it can't be the same thing.
No, not the same thing, but that's exactly what we're doing. So when they come to the workshop, we've encouraged them to bring a new piece. So we're working with them on that new piece with experienced workshop leaders and usually judges from the previous year's prize. And we're allowing them to work up that story and then they resubmit it. And again, it will be submitted blind. But we're hoping that the knowledge can be spread more evenly, again, to make things more inclusive.
So you're honing the skills,
We're
basically.
honing the skills and we're trying to broaden that as much as possible. We're also doing craft development workshops in Sri Lanka and we'll be opening that up to Southeast Asia next year.
So there's a lot going on. We
Yeah.
have to leave it there. We've been talking to the Programme Manager for the Commonwealth Writers, Janet Steele, and the Director General of the Commonwealth Foundation, Vijay Krishnarayan. Well, the overall winner of this year's Commonwealth Short Story competition came from Trinidad and Tobago. He is Kevin Jared Hussain, and he joins us now. Congratulations, Kevin.
Thank
Tell
you.
us what your story was all about and why you think it won.
My story is called Passage. It is set in my home country of Trinidad and Tobago. It is about an old hiker who is having a few drinks with his friends and he overhears a story about a mysterious woman along a mountain trail along with a mysterious house, and he decides that he hasn't really done anything for himself in a while. So he decides, he puts it in his head, like there's some kind of gravitational pull towards it, that he wants to see this mystery woman, he wants to see the house. So he sets out on that trail, but a lot of things go wrong along that trail.
Does
Why?
it have a happy ending?
No.
No.
No, it doesn't. I don't think it has a happy ending for anyone involved in this story.
So what was the idea behind writing it? When you write, are you trying to, if you like, get into the psychology of your protagonists, or is there a message at the end?
The story is a true story that happened in Trinidad. It happened when I was about 15 or 16 years old. It wasn't an old hiker, it was actually a little girl who used to just go up and down the mountain trail, and she saw what she saw. Now, I tried to angle it a little different, but the situation is something that actually happened. Now, when it happened, the story was so strange that everyone cast it off as madness. That is what we tend to do, sometimes tend to simplify these very complex situations as that. But yes, I try to explore the psychology of the situations. I try to make sense of it, and a lot of my writing deals with pulling these strange stories out that people see as madness and trying to get a little deeper into it. Why? What really happened? Like, why did this happen? What were they thinking at the time?
So it's a way of looking into the psyche, and it probably applies to everybody. But you write, I think, in your spare time. What do you actually do as a job?
I'm a science teacher. I teach biology and physics.
And when do you find the time to sit down for you and put pen to paper?
I don't have children, so that helps. But I find time, any time in between, I usually have my laptop or a notebook with me. Even if there's like time between classes, like a half hour, an hour, I'm always writing down things all the time. After school, I usually go to a cafe, probably for an hour and a half. I usually have to because I have to wait for my fiancé to finish work. So I find time, little pockets of time in between, and I try to do like 1,000 words a day.
I was going to ask you about how you manage to, if you like, keep the flow going when you're writing in little half-hour or 1.5 hour spots. Some people might say it's much easier to sit down and say, I'm going to sit and get this story done, and then go back over and fine-tune it. But doing it in little chunks must be quite difficult to make sure you keep that flow.
That's a good question, Dave. When I sit down to write in those half hour, I don't think about quality. I just think about getting things down. It doesn't have to be the best. It doesn't have to be even good. Usually about 60 to 70% of it I would cut out later. It's just important for me to have it down at least. I set aside probably entire nights or so on, usually Saturday night, Sunday night, which would be probably 8 to 10 hours, like about 8 hours, and I would go through those things.
So that's when you really do the fine-tuning.
That's when I would really... that's when you real writing. The real writing is rewriting, right? So I guess that is when the real writing would happen.
And so how long did the passage take you to actually complete?
I wrote that in one night. So
one night?
Yeah, I think I just... I was thinking about the situation, and a lot of my short stories I usually just write in one burst and just edit a little bit late. So it's the opposite for writing a longer work is usually, but writing a short story, I try not to take more than 2 or 3 days.
And what finally do you think that winning this Commonwealth Short Story competition will do for you? You've been a regional winner, I think, before, and you've entered many times, but this is the final prize. So what's it going to do for your writing career? Do you give up teaching?
No, I don't. I love teaching. And currently there's no friction between my teaching and writing. Maybe if there's some, there's bigger opportunities that come with writing, maybe. But what will it do for me? Well, I know the first time that I won, I had nothing published before. And the first time, that was just 3 years ago, a lot of people came with opportunities, and I tried to take as many as I could. And I was prepared for that because I had a lot of manuscripts just sitting around, and I did not know what to do with them. So it gave me a lot of confidence, a lot of validation. This time around, I think I'm more proud for my country than for myself this time because Trinidad won the overall prize last year as well. And such a small country to produce, overall winners twice in a row. I think I'm just going to take what comes. I'm ready for what comes because I have work that is there. I'm just hoping that it will help me stand out a little more. Yeah.
Well, congratulations go to Kevin Jared Hussein from Trinidad and Tobago, the overall winner of the 2018 Commonwealth Writers Short Story Competition. Staying with the short story competition, the chair of the judges panel is Sarah Hall. Sarah, thanks for joining us. First of all, you're a short story writer, or a writer, should we say, in your own right. So tell me what makes a good short story.
Oh, yeah, it's tricky. Because the great thing about the short story form, one of the great things, is it has traditions across the world. And those traditions mean different things, structurally, content-wise. So you're looking at a lot of variety. And one of the things this competition really showcases is the variety of the short story form across the world. But I think, in essence, a good short story is doing the same thing. It's using economy, a kind of acute psychology of character, and those ingredients were showing up in the stories that we received from everywhere. What we were really looking for was something that seemed to have been written with a kind of clarity, containing drama, containing a kind of narrative that was suspenseful somehow, all the great things that a short story can do in the various forms. It was extraordinarily difficult to judge, but also fantastic. And actually the winning stories that came through, you could see immediately the quality of the writing was there.
So how did you get into writing?
I always wanted to do it, I think. I was a kid that was brought up in the Lake District in north of England, so there was a lot of roaming around, being by myself, thinking of things, sort of hearing voices, imagining stories. I don't know if that had an effect. It probably did. I always felt like I could express myself best when I was writing rather than speaking, one of those reticent northern kids that never said anything, unless it was on the page. And I studied the short story form at university. I knew it was a very difficult form. I was already writing by then. I had a couple of cracks at it when I was young, couldn't do it very well. And I realised it, was going to be a sort of an apprenticeship. In the way I think that poets often realise that the form is difficult, you're going to need to be an apprentice for a while. I was first published as a novelist and then came back to short stories later. And felt like I'd mastered some of the skills necessary. You never really feel like you've mastered all the skills necessary, I think. Even writing your own short stories, there's a lot of work that's ditched. It's a kind of rare thing to come up with something, as Kevin was talking about, that feels good in the first draft or that seems to have its correct shape in the first draft. I think that can really help with short stories. Novels, you write them, they can be baggy, they get edited down, there's a bit more room for imperfection. But a short story has to have something immediately, I think.
So you have to have discipline.
I think so. I think the editing brain kicks in earlier with a short story. Not to say they aren't edited after the fact on the page, but I think I've found, certainly anyway as a writer, that if my editing brain is switched on immediately and the sentences in their first instance are coming down right on the page, that's going to help overall. That's going to create something, hopefully, that will work.
Let's talk about the competition and the countless short stories that you obviously had to go through as chair of the judging panel. But how did you cooperate with the other judges to make sure that you all were sort of singing from the same song sheet? Do you give them instructions beforehand? What are you aiming for?
Not with this. I think, these were judges who understood the form. They were writers themselves and critics, and they kind of worked in the field. We had a discussion about what we were each looking for and what we enjoy about the short story form. But again, we knew what was going to come in would be very varied, and so you really have to remain open. It was a fairly difficult process, not least because you're looking at judges from across the world and trying to figure out some time zones for a Skype meeting is tricky. And as a chair, having to kind of not marshal exactly, but make sure that everybody's getting the chance to speak and put forward ideas. We had a pretty good system, I think, for going through the stories. But I think we were finding, even though our tastes may have differed, we were all recognising the stories that were rising to the top quite easily, I think. So there was a sense that, great fiction is universal. It sort of translates beyond itself. So you can recognise it. We were recognising the things that I think were rising to the top.
Now, we heard that the short stories can be submitted in, I think, 7 languages at the moment, about to be 8. Mm-hmm. But I'm presuming that you don't read Portuguese or Swahili.
Sadly
or whatever.
Not. If I had a superpower, one superpower, that's what I'd choose, to be able to read and speak every language in the world. But
so how does that work out? Because presumably if you get one of the, let's say, Swahili readers saying, this is brilliant, how do the rest of the judges come to appreciate it? Because it has to presumably be translated, and then you lose, potentially lose.
Or gain, if your translator's very good. Yes, it's very difficult, I think. But it's unavoidable. I think if you're really going to be a Commonwealth Short Story Prize, then you need to have that feature. And I think people submitting in their first language, and then certainly the Foundation looks for the very best translators. So I think we all felt assured that all of the translations would have been done as best as possible, working very sensitively with the original document. And yes, I think that there may be qualities that you can detect in a translated piece of fiction, but that can often work in its favour sometimes too, I think. And again, if the components of the story are strong, if the plot's there, the characters are there, the setting's there, that kind of disquiet and uncanny feeling that the short story can create in the reader, if that's there. On the level of language, yes, there may be not scars exactly, but there may be marks where you can see a translation, or you can sense a translation perhaps. It's not going to affect it negatively overall, because the power remains of the actual original piece. So I think we all felt fairly confident that even in translation we were going to find those stories that were working best.
And what would be your advice to anybody listening to this who thinks, I can write a short story, but perhaps they think, maybe I can't? Where do they start?
Reading other short stories will help, I think, and just kind of seeing how it's done in the hands of a master or mistress. But also, I always say, the more mental blocks you put in place, the less likely you are to kind of feel free enough to, and give yourself permission enough to write. So I always try and just, encourage.
Just do it.
Just do it, and it'll be imperfect again, as I think Kevin was saying. Just getting it down on the page in the first instance is everything for all kinds of writing. And the editing is where something will be turned more perfectly or towards perfection, which is what you're aiming for. So that kind of getting in touch with the automatic self, I think, is important. Just do it. Everybody has stories. Everybody has something to say. Not everybody will end up being Chekhov or Flannery O'Connor or, James Salter, but some might. And it's an apprenticeship, as I found. You just have to get on and do it and improve, be read by other people, be open to editing. I think a great writer is someone who's very open to editing because there is a sense of wanting to connect with the reader. And an editor is somebody who's going to enable you to fulfill that to a better degree than you might be able to just yourself. So that's what I would recommend. Write, find good readers, be brave.
Good advice from Sarah Hall, herself a writer and the chair of the judges at this year's Commonwealth Short Story competition.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
In collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
The biggest achievement of Crime Stoppers has been the ability of the public to be able to give information about crime anonymously.
There's no way I could have kept prostituting without the drugs. There's no way I could have had my body used like a public toilet, because that's actually what prostitution is.
And then the fourth series I started 3 days after I'd won the Oscar, so the whole of the Monarch of the Glen experience was all interplatted with the Gosford Park Oscar experience.
I was working with Ronnie James Dio, and David was going to reform Whitesnake in 2003.
Cyprus was chosen because Cyprus is a stable, peaceful and secure place.
We have to really look closely. What are we doing with children? What are we doing with adolescents? And what are we doing with adults that can help them move into a more literate situation?
The ones that I'm proudest of are the ones that were true discoveries, where we found something we didn't know existed.
Cypriot racing driver Tio Ellinas heads into this weekend's Snetterton round of the Porsche Carrera Cup GB at the top of the table. He spoke to Francesca Davis Rocco about his hopes for the weekend's racing.
I was basically very good there last year. Really quick. I made the 2 fastest lap at the races last year, so plan is to start the weekend very well from free practices and onwards, and if we can win the race, then that will be best plan possible. From our position, from where we are now, I think it's very doable to win it. So.
And would you say the nature of the course suits your style of driving?
Yeah, it's pretty technical. It has different kind of corners. From the time they resurfaced the circuit and they made the new layout from 2011, so hopefully will suit our car and our setup, and everything will go down to the plan we have in mind.
So we're halfway through the season. How would you assess it so far for you?
It was a good start, straight from the beginning. Made a win at Donington, and also a couple of second and third places, couple of podiums. I'm up there playing for the championship with Dino, 5 points behind him, so plan is just to have a good weekend now, see if I can close up the gap, midway point, and from there on just trying to keep concentrated and be in front of him.
Cypriot racing driver Tio Ellinas talking to Francesca Davis Ruocco from Lloyd Bell Productions about his aspirations as he goes into action at Snetterton this weekend. Well, with the island shutting down pretty well for the next couple of weeks at least, I think we'll also take a break at the Cyprus News Digest. I hope to be back at the beginning of September, but till we meet again, have a great summer and take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.